Want to get a handle on what's happening in Pakistan right now, without wading through mountains of reports.
Yeah, it can be a lot.
Well, think of this as your accelerated briefing then.
Perfect.
We've pulled together a ton of sources on Pakistan as of March 2025.
Trying to cut to the chase.
Exactly. We want to give you the key insights across all the big areas.
Security, politics, economics, even what's going on in society as a whole.
You can get up to speed fast.
Without getting bogged down.
Right. So to start, we went through articles, research, expert opinions, the whole works.
Really a wide range.
And we're going to pull out those essential nuggets.
What's really interesting is how interconnected all these areas are.
Oh, absolutely. Like you can't talk about politics without the security situation playing a role.
Exactly.
So speaking of security, let's jump in there, shall we? Things seem pretty tense, especially in Balochistan.
Yeah, Balochistan keeps popping up, and not for good reasons. It seems like there's been a real escalation in terrorist activity there.
I was reading about that.
And a lot of it is linked to the Balochistan Liberation Army, the BLA. They've been incredibly active. We've seen everything from suicide bombings to attacks on military convoys.
And they're claiming some pretty high casualty numbers, too.
Yeah, which, if true, points to a pretty worrying level of effectiveness and, frankly, a sign that the insurgency might be gaining strength. It's impacting daily life, too. Universities in Balochistan have actually had to close and move classes online because of security concerns.
Yeah.
That's how serious it is. Imagine education getting disrupted like that.
It really highlights the level of risk. And this isn't just a Balochistan problem, is it? There's that Lupti operative who was killed recently.
Right, Abu Qatal, he was a pretty high-ranking figure in Lashkar-e-Taiba.
And Lefta's focus is more on the Kashmir region, isn't it?
It is, yeah. But the point is, anytime you take out someone that high up, it creates ripples. And those ripples can lead to instability, maybe even retaliation. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Definitely. And then you've got the TTP, the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan, making their own moves. They're announcing this whole operation to enforce Sharia law. We've seen attacks on police stations, which really feels like a direct challenge to the government.
Yeah, no question. It's a pretty bold statement. They're not just talking, they're acting. And that creates a whole other layer of complexity for the government to deal with.
Speaking of the government, they seem to have their own take on why all this is happening. They're pointing fingers, right?
Oh, yeah. The government's been pretty vocal about blaming external forces, mainly India and Afghanistan, for backing these groups.
Accusing them of stirring the pot.
Exactly. And that just adds another layer, a geopolitical layer, to an already complicated internal security situation.
It's like a tangled web.
Yeah.
So what are they actually doing about all of this? What's the government response?
Well, there's a lot of talk. Parliament is holding meetings. There are new commitments to counterterrorism efforts, and the military is putting on a show of force.
Projecting stress.
Yeah, but the reality is the attacks kept happening, especially in Balochistan. It suggests that despite all the talk and posturing, they're having a real hard time actually containing these threats.
It's one thing to talk tough. It's another to actually get a grip on the situation.
Exactly. And then you've got the whole border situation with Afghanistan.
Which is tense, to say the least.
Yeah. They've closed down several crossing points. That doesn't help matters.
Makes cooperation pretty difficult, I imagine.
Yeah, it's not exactly conducive to stability or security.
Not at all. So shifting gears a bit, let's talk politics. I imagine with all this going on, it's got to be dominating the political landscape right now.
It is. I mean, this is Prime Minister Sharif's government, and they're dealing with a lot.
Absolutely.
National security and how to combat terrorism, those are the hot topics right now, no question.
And they're front and center.
Mm.
We've also got other political developments happening in the background. Like the Election Commission issued that notification about PTIP.
Right. That's all part of the political maneuvering that's always going on. But honestly, the thing that's really been making waves are the amendments to the Prevention of Electronic Crimes Act. PICA, as it's known.
That sparked some serious debate, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. The changes they made to PICA, they're pretty controversial. They basically criminalized what they're calling false news.
And with some pretty hefty penalties, too, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. The potential punishments are quite severe, and they've created these new government bodies to regulate online content.
Which a lot of people see as a big red flag.
For sure. Media organizations, human rights groups, they're all pretty worried about what this could mean. They see it as potential censorship, a crackdown on freedom of expression.
Yeah, it's definitely raising concerns. And it
Yeah,
seems like the pressure on freedom of expression isn't limited to the online world. There's that whole situation with the PTM, the Passion Tafus movement,
exactly. The government has reportedly banned them, and there's been a lot of criticism about that.
especially because they're all about peaceful assembly.
Right. So there are concerns about the government suppressing dissent, not just online, but in the real world, too. Even the UN Human Rights Committee, when they reviewed Pakistan's human rights record recently, emphasized the need to protect these freedoms.
It's like a pattern emerging. And unfortunately, it's not the only human rights issue that's causing concern.
Sadly, no. We keep seeing these reports of problems with minority rights, particularly when it comes to religious minorities.
Forced conversions keep coming up.
Yeah, and the misuse of blasphemy laws. The Ahmadiyya community, they seem particularly vulnerable to that. And then we have the crackdowns on protests by ethnic minorities. There's a lot going on there.
It's a pretty grim picture, to be honest. And the situation for women, it doesn't sound like it's getting much better either.
No, not really. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. Pakistan consistently ranks low in terms of gender equality. And it's not just one thing, it's a whole bunch of interconnected issues.
Like what specifically?
Well, you've got the big gap in economic participation. Women are underrepresented in the workforce, especially in leadership roles. And then there's the deep-rooted cultural stuff.
The traditional roles and expectations for women.
Exactly. And all of that creates an environment where things like violence against women can persist. We're talking about so-called honor killings, forced marriages, and even the forced conversion and marriage of minority girls.
Really a lot of ground to cover there.
Absolutely. It's a multifaceted problem.
So let's move on to the economy. I mean, with all these challenges, is there any good news there?
Well, there are some signs of things stabilizing, at least. GDP growth has picked up recently, so that's positive. And inflation has actually gone down quite a bit. In February, it hit a 9-year low.
That's got to be good news for people.
Oh, definitely. Lower food prices have played a role, and the exchange rate has been more stable, too. So, yeah, that's good news. The central bank, they're forecasting that inflation will probably stay fairly stable for now.
Hopefully they're right.
Fingers crossed. And then there's the foreign exchange reserves. They've actually gone up, which is a big relief.
Oh, why is that?
Well, part of it is thanks to China. They agreed to extend the repayment period on some of the loans they've given to Pakistan. It's called a debt rollover. So that gives Pakistan a little breathing room, financially speaking.
A bit of a cushion.
Yeah. And we've seen foreign direct investment increase lately, too, and investor confidence seems to be improving, at least a little. But honestly, the overall level of investment is still pretty low. That's a concern.
It's hard to build momentum without investment.
Exactly. And of course, we can't talk about Pakistan's economy without talking about the IMF.
The International Monetary Fund.
Right. Their relationship is still absolutely crucial. The IMF has said they're happy with the progress the government is making, but, and there's always a but, they haven't released the next installment of funding yet.
So they're holding back.
Yeah, they want to see a few more things happen first. There are negotiations going on about things like agricultural taxes and reforms in the gas sector. They need to finalize those before the money flows. Plus, Pakistan still has a pretty big external financing gap to fill.
It's a tough balancing act. But on a positive note, Pakistan does have a pretty diverse economy, right?
It does, yeah. They've got a bunch of different industries that contribute. The textile industry is a big one. It's actually the largest manufacturing sector and a major source of export revenue.
The clothes and fabrics.
Exactly. And then there's the tech sector. It's growing super fast and has a lot of potential for exports, too. Agriculture, obviously, is huge, employs a ton of people, but it faces a lot of challenges. And then you have real estate. It attracts a lot of investment, particularly from overseas. But large-scale manufacturing, that's been a bit up and down. Performance has been inconsistent.
It's a mixed bag.
Yeah, it is.
And what about poverty? What's the situation there?
Well, the estimates vary depending on who you ask. Some organizations use different poverty lines, so it gets a bit complicated. But the bottom line is that a large chunk of the population is struggling. It's a multifaceted problem. You've got economic instability, inflation eating away at people's purchasing power, and a lack of equal opportunities. Plus, the recent economic shocks have pushed a lot of people who weren't poor before into poverty. We call them the new poor.
That's rough. So is the government doing anything to help?
Oh, yeah, they've got a whole bunch of initiatives going on. There's this big one called Uran in Pakistan, which is all about transforming the economy. And then there's the National Economic Transformation Plan. They've got a 5-pronged approach to that one, which sounds pretty ambitious. They're also working with the World Bank. The World Bank has pledged something like $20 billion to help with various projects. It's aimed at improving healthcare, education, and reducing poverty. And then there are social safety net programs like ISA's Kafalat and BISP, which provide direct cash transfers to the most vulnerable households. They've also got the Ramadan relief package to help people cope with the rising cost of living.
Sounds like they're throwing a lot at the problem.
Yeah, they're trying a lot of different things. The focus seems to be on creating jobs, attracting foreign investment, and protecting the most vulnerable. We'll see what kind of impact it all has.
It's a long road. So let's turn to the social sector. Healthcare and education, those are always big issues, right?
Oh, absolutely. Healthcare in Pakistan, it's got some serious challenges. The infrastructure, especially in rural areas, is lacking. The government doesn't spend nearly enough on healthcare, and there are huge shortages of essential supplies and trained staff. Plus, they're dealing with a high burden of disease.
Both communicable and non-communicable.
Yeah, everything from infectious diseases to chronic conditions like heart disease and diabetes. And then you have the high maternal and infant mortality rates. Mental health care is also a neglected area. Basically, access to quality health care is limited for a lot of people, and many end up facing catastrophic health expenditures. They have to pay out of pocket, and it can wipe out their savings.
It's a system under strain.
Yeah, and there are a lot of inefficiencies too. But the government does have some initiatives in place. They've got this National Health Vision 2025, which aims to achieve universal health coverage and provide financial protection for everyone. They've also got the Sihat Sahulat program, which offers free health insurance to a significant portion of the population. And then there's the Polio Eradication Initiative and the National Nutrition Program. Plus, they're working with international organizations like the World Health Organization, WHO, and UNICEF to improve things.
So there's some hope there.
Yeah, there are definitely people working hard to make things better.
What about education?
Education, it's another area with deep-rooted problems. High dropout rates, especially among girls, are a major concern. Access to quality education is uneven, and the curriculum is often outdated.
Sounds familiar.
Right. And it all ties back to that learning poverty issue that the World Bank talks about. Basically, even kids who are in school aren't learning the essential skills they need. But the government is trying to address this with education reforms. They've incorporated some of these goals into Iran, Pakistan, their big economic transformation plan. It's about investing in human capital, improving the quality of education, and making sure everyone has a chance to learn.
So it's a work in progress.
It is. And we can't forget about gender inequality in education. It's a huge issue, with girls often facing barriers to accessing education. It all goes back to those deeply ingrained social norms we talked about earlier.
The same ones contributing to violence against women and all the other issues.
Exactly. It's all interconnected.
It's clear that these internal challenges are playing out against a complex global backdrop. Let's talk a bit about Pakistan's role on the world stage. It seems like they're navigating some pretty tricky relationships.
Yeah, they are. Relations with the United States are strained. It's a bit of a gray area right now.
Not quite allies, not quite enemies.
Right. The U.S. has sanctions in place because of Pakistan's missile program, and there are concerns about their nuclear program, too. Plus, Pakistan just isn't as high of a priority for the U.S. as it used to be.
Other things are taking precedence.
Exactly. So the relationship at the government-to-government level, it might be a bit frosty, but there's still potential for cooperation, particularly on the military side.
Interesting. What about China? That relationship seems to be going strong.
Oh, yeah. China is a major ally for Pakistan. They've been providing a lot of economic, military, and technological support. That support has been crucial for Pakistan, especially when it comes to their dealings with the IMF. It's also interesting to note that China recently played a role in mediating between Iran and Saudi Arabia. It'll be interesting to see how that impacts the region.
It's definitely something to watch. Now, India. That relationship has been pretty tense for a long time.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly. The Kashmir dispute is a major sticking point, and there are constant accusations of cross-border terrorism. India accuses Pakistan of supporting militants in Kashmir, and Pakistan accuses India of doing the same in Balochistan. It's a stalemate.
Not a lot of dialogue happening.
No, bilateral relations are basically frozen, and even their interactions in multilateral forums are pretty limited.
It's a tough situation. And then there's Afghanistan.
Yeah, Afghanistan is another thorny issue. Pakistan accuses Afghanistan of harboring terrorists who carry out attacks in Pakistan, and there have been border standoffs and clashes.
And now they've closed those border crossings.
Right. It's not a good situation. There's very little cooperation on counterterrorism efforts.
That's like everyone's pointing fingers.
Pretty much. And then you have Iran. Pakistan wants to maintain good relations with Iran, but they also have these close defense ties with Saudi Arabia. It's a delicate balancing act.
Especially with all the historical tensions between Iran and Saudi Arabia.
Exactly, but Pakistan has generally tried to stay neutral in disputes between Muslim states.
It's a tough position to be in.
Yeah, they're trying to play it carefully.
So despite all this, Pakistan has been elected to the UN Security Council.
Yeah, for the 2025-2026 term.
That's a pretty big deal.
It is. It shows that despite all their challenges, they're still seen as an important player on the world stage.
What do you think their priorities will be on the Security Council?
Well, they're likely to focus on issues related to international peace and security, particularly when it comes to terrorism. They've always been vocal about the need for more international cooperation on counterterrorism efforts, and they'll probably use their platform to advocate for their position on Kashmir and to try to get more international support for their efforts to stabilize Afghanistan.
It'll be interesting to see how they use their influence.
Definitely.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. It's clear that Pakistan is at a crossroads. They're facing a whole bunch of security, political, economic, and social challenges, and it's all happening within a very complex global environment.
It's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, it is. But hopefully this deep dive has given you a better sense of what's going on in Pakistan right now and what the key issues are.
And remember, all these different aspects we talked about, they're all connected. What happens in one area impacts the others.
Absolutely. It's a dynamic situation, constantly evolving. So with all that in mind, here's something for you to think about. Considering all these interconnected challenges and opportunities, what single factor do you think will most significantly shape Pakistan's trajectory in the coming years, and why?
It's a tough question, but there's definitely one worth pondering.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back soon to explore another complex issue. Until then, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep engaging with the world around you.